Hey Susties, and welcome back to Sustainable is the New Black. I'm your host, Ellie Cooper, and I'll be taking you through the latest slow fashion scandal which has hit TikTok, which is the odd muse allegations that they're not actually slow fashion, which has led them to removing slow fashion claims from their website. Let's get into it. We're gonna preamble this. The founder has had a lot of hate. Now, there's two levels of hate. There's genuinely calling out the brand, being like, you aren't making sustainable clothes, these are, as a consumer, you have a right to question and call out brands. You do. It's your consumer rights. However, that's one form of calling out. What has then happened is people have then got on the bandwagon of then hating and being nasty and getting in her DMs and being really malicious. And that's uncalled for, and male founders probably wouldn't have had that. Okay, so that's just sexism and just nastiness, and we're not here for that. That's not what this episode is about. I'm all here for female founders. I love fashion. I just want to make sure that we are educating the consumer, not misleading them, and the right thing. And it's okay to make mistakes. Lots of brands do. It's then how you then deal with that and move forward. So let's talk about the history of Odd Muse. Who are Odd Muse? Now, Odd Muse came to the scene in 2020, and this happened when the founder, Amy Smell, she left ASOS and wanted to start a nice quality fashion brand. Okay, so who are Odd Muse? Odd Muse is a UK-based brand known for sharp, structured pieces. Think power blazers, tailored jumpsuits, and a minimal colour palette. The branding screams quiet luxury at an accessible point. They also have marketed themselves heavily as a slow fashion brand, a big bold claim in today's market. Now, I am a big fan of the brand. I think it's got gorgeous pieces. I've even looked to try and rent some of them at certain occasions. I'm a big fan, and I think her whole goal here was to actually get people to basically reframe their mind about fashion, that we should be looking to invest in better quality clothes, timeless pieces that you could wear again and again. And she talks about going in and buying a blazer that would last you 5 years, that has lasted as long as the brand has existed. And so that's where she sort of sees the slow fashion aspect, because it's slowing down your consumption, because you don't need to buy a new blazer every single year if you're buying cheap quality. Instead, you buy one good quality blazer that lasts a while. And she's sort of comparing it to the high-end brands like Dolce & Gabbana, but this is a much more accessible price point. So, what's the issue? Well, recently followers and customers have begun questioning the label and pointing out their frequent new drops, use of polyester fabric, and the lack of detail around production ethics and environmental impacts. It really mounted on TikTok and Instagram, and eventually Odd Muse felt the pressure and gave in and removed their slow fashion from their bio and their marketing. And then the founder responded with a TikTok video. And it's the response that I'm really going to talk about, because she covered a lot in it and I really want to unpack it and further inform the consumer. So in the video, the founder defended the brand's choices and addressed the criticism. A few key points. So first of all, they really push this whole idea that they use grade A polyester. What does it mean to be grade A polyester? Higher denier threads, tighter weaves, and treatments that can make a fabric feel more luxurious. Think about a polyester in a $500 blazer compared to a $10 blazer from Shein. However, that being said, it's still virgin polyester. There's no recyclability spoken about. It's still new material being made, which means it's derived from oil. That's a fossil fuel. You're therefore not sourcing any sustainable material, you're just focused on durability. And I think what we need to really talk about here is the fact that slow fashion encompasses a multitude of different factors, and just because you have one doesn't automatically make you super slow. And additionally, I don't think you could ever claim that you're truly slow if you are making things from virgin polyester. At that point, you're just a fashion brand, and that's not a bad thing. She's a luxury fashion brand at an accessible point. Fine. Who makes timeless silhouettes pieces? Great, leave it as that description, and then the customer gets to decide really if they think it's slow enough or sustainable enough for them to feel confident about buying. Because I'm sure, as many customers have, they've bought from you regardless of your claim on that. Yeah, so just because it makes it more durable, actually doesn't claim that the material itself is more sustainable. You can talk about the story and why you think it is, but the material isn't sustainable. It's just arguably a better quality than fast fashion, which is fine. Objectively, you can say that, but you doesn't necessarily mean that it's more sustainable. So we've spoken about like a little bit of material. So what does it actually mean to be a slow fashion brand? Now, slow fashion isn't just about making timeless clothes. It's about the entire ecosystem of it being made, people wearing it, and then disposing of it. The entire life cycle is what we're considering here. So we're talking about low production frequency, which Muse had said that they've done. Again, this isn't fully calling them out, this is just a case study to talk about slow fashion. So low production frequency, so not constant new collections like a lot of fast fashion brands. On average, some fashion brands are bringing out new collections every single week. Ethical labour, we need to be looking at living wages, safe working conditions, and also quite important to have transparency about factories being audited. You either need to say who your factories are being audited by, so then the consumer can go and check out that organisation to see what their standards are, or actually have up your audits and say exactly what you are considering when auditing. It's really important. I think when we talk about sustainability, we immediately think of the materials, the impact it has on the environment, but sustainability is a 3-pillar approach, and it encompasses social, because let's be real, yes, everything's impacting the environment, but that also means it's impacting people, but it wouldn't be impacting anyone if there wasn't people making it. And now we need to really remember that and remember who makes your clothes. And then we are talking about sustainable materials. So this is where they've really made the mistake of saying that the material was sustainable because it's more durable, because ultimately it's all about moving away from synthetic materials. And if you are going to be using synthetic materials, are they recycled? Okay, great, they are recycled. Are they textile to textile, or recycled fishing nets, or plastic bottles? Because all 3 of those have different implications. So again, none of those 3, okay, so can't really even claim that, fine. So what are we talking about when we're talking about sustainable materials? We are looking towards more natural fibres. Natural fibres we can include are cotton, wool, silk, linen, hemp, often more breathable, comfortable and biodegradable, and they generally have a lower carbon footprint than synthetics, as they require less energy for harvesting and cultivation. However, that doesn't make them automatically better. There's obviously cons to it, but on the whole have a much lower carbon impact than synthetics, because oil versus natural, do you know what I mean? However, there are other considerations. When we've got cotton, it's like, okay, well, what cotton are you sourcing? Organic? Recycled? Are you looking at their programs? Have you seen how much water conservation has gone into that? If you looked at Better Cotton Initiative, what are we talking about? But she was saying they can't use natural fibres to get the structured silhouette style that they love, that their customers love and have bought for the past 5 years, and and that's so valid, because a lot of natural fibre materials are a lot softer, and that's why they're good for this. So for example, this top is made from tencel, which again is a natural fibre, and it's really stretchy and really soft, and it's perfect for bodycon stuff, and for example, like Tala's 365 collection. Yeah, you can't make that with what they were going for, and that's fine. But she then said, but we still have made some cotton-based products, and again, it's like, okay, cotton. What kind of cotton? And again, but I think that's also then missing the point, because it's, like I said, it's one thing using natural fibres, but what natural fibres? Where are you sourcing your cotton from? And also, there's so many dyes that are really bad for the environment. What are your factories doing with regards to wastewater? Are they ZDHC certified? Zero discharge of hazardous chemicals? And if they're not, okay, well then it's on you to then encourage them to look into transitioning to get to that stage. The thing is she's a small brand, and what she's done, the scale she's built to in the last 5 years. Store in London, store in New York, like everything she's achieved, her 50-person team in the last 5 years. Huge, 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 huge. However, you know, you have got to be incredibly careful. So like a classic example of a slow fashion brand is an upcycled material. That's traditionally where sort of that slow fashion comes from. It's like upcycled materials, it's doing it so slow and intricately, and the any collections. Okay, so the slow fashion, it's low production, ethical labour considerations, sustainable materials, longevity by design, which arguably she hits that one, because it's again timeless silhouettes. Instead of focusing on the latest trend that you'll wear for about a season and possibly never again until the next season cycles round, but you've already sold it or thrown it away because you don't know when that next cycle is going to be, you focus on timeless things like smart trousers, smart dresses that can be worn in any season, and blazers. You can't ever go wrong with a blazer. So she hits that, that's fine. That's not actually, that's, to be honest, that's more about the impact on the consumer. I think what we're missing the point here is that almost 60% of the impact of fashion happens at the production stage. So yes, you know, Amy is saying, the founder's saying here, that it's a more sustainable, timeless piece because it's thicker, better quality, and you know, it's a timeless piece, so it'll last, people will wear it a lot. Well, actually the impact is roughly 20 to 30% at that point. At the consumer stage, when you're using it, what you do with it, that's 20 to 30% of the impact. The biggest impact is at the production stage. And arguably, you know, she's considered the, you know, design stage. It's like, okay, well, we're designing it to last. That's great, but that's 20 to 30%. You know, we're talking about 60 here. That's a big, over half of the impact is at the production stage. What are you doing at that point to limit your impact, to make it slow? She did quote it as a toxic approach online. Toxic approach to polyester online was the quote. And I just thought, well, it's kind of toxic for the environment, so it's kind of valid. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of the people who are calling out brands wear the polyester, and so arguably you'd be like, oh, that's hypocritical. But it's more like we'll have limited options to buy sustainably. And so when brands claim that they are doing something sustainably and you buy into that, guess what? We're going to be a bit annoyed. We're going to be a bit annoyed. One of the biggest issues I had with the response video, she sort of alluded to the point that unless you're a founder or have a background in material construction, you don't have a leg to stand on to call out a brand. And I just thought that was really rather unfair, because I think that's kind of almost assuming that the consumer knows nothing. Well, how many people are clued up on this area because sustainability matters to them, so they've gone and done their research? How many people work at sustainable NGOs, fashion NGOs? How many people have read a book on sustainable fashion? How many people have read an article where the articles are saying, hey, polyester's not great, you know, it's not truly fair? And you know, I get some people might not have a clue, but it's kind of unfair to sweepingly state that most don't. But again, stress, you know, you do feel like you're doing, and I can appreciate it. I can see in the moment she feels like she is doing the best she can do with the circumstances that she's got, with the desired look she's going for. And I think the thing is ultimately she's built this amazing brand, no denial about that, but unless you have more than probably 1 or 2 points on slow fashion, and you're still using a virgin material, you can't really class it as slow fashion. And that's fine. That's fine. You actually don't have to claim it as slow fashion. You can, in your About Me page, tell the story of why you think you are limiting your impacts, but acknowledge that, you know, you're not slow fashion, but you're not fast fashion. You are just a fashion brand. You're just a fashion brand. And that's okay. That you are allowed to be like that. It's just to let you know in a minute, once you get to a certain point in your figures, you're going to be hit with some regulation that's going to really ask for you to get clues up on your life cycle impact. From the beginning to the end, what are you doing to meet the regulations? So it's also in your best interest financially down the road to start thinking about it, but for now, you can also get in bother by not correctly leading the consumer. You're not informing the consumer correctly. I would again like to sort of take a bit of an analysis on this as well and deep dive a bit further. Amy is an amazing founder. She's had a great story, she's had great success. Her pieces are stunning and arguably quite unique in the face of the very saturated fast fashion general industry. I do agree that consumers are allowed to call out brands. They should. There should be discussions about this. But at the same time, female founders are under a lot more scrutiny than their male counterparts. It just is a fact. At every industry, at every level, women are held to a higher standard and therefore a higher standard of scrutiny. And additionally, there's two other points I'd like to make here. Amy is a very big personal brand. She talks about her brand. She takes the consumers and her followers with her through her process. She talks very openly about her experiences. She's even, shown that she has a very close relationship with her supplier. But my point being is that because she's such a public face, interacts a lot with the public, she is then therefore under more scrutiny because people can say, we've seen this and we know you're a big personality in terms of communicating with your followers, so it would be unlikely that you wouldn't respond. So we're gonna ask and say, why aren't you doing the right thing? Because we're expecting a response. Whereas how many times have you gone to comment on Zara or Mango or Shein, quite frankly, or any other fast fashion, medium fashion, and asked them or commented on their stuff and said, hey, what are you doing about sustainability? And they haven't responded. That's typically because it's their forward-facing social media page and not the founder. Because guess what? How many founders are men, old men, that aren't going to have a social media presence where they communicate? They're not going to be like, yes, slay. You know what I mean? They're not online as much as modern day female founders are, a lot of them anyway. And well, it's because they don't need to. They're already making enough money that they don't need to have that personal brand connection. But my point is she was more accessible to target, if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of sexism there in terms of personal brand social media presence. Women are more likely to be on it. Additionally, women are held to a higher standard of scrutiny. And my third point on the sort of injustice of it all is that statistically, women are more likely to care about sustainability, and that includes greenwashing claims. The research that has been done around this area is that men feel slightly emasculated by participating in sustainability because you kind of have to care. And that makes them feel gay, apparently, which is crazy and just wrong on all accounts. But that's what the research has shown. And so whilst there's that point of that women care more, Amy's brand is a women's wear brand. So therefore, her audience already cares more about sustainability. So they're gonna have more backlash. Where brands like Shein and Zara and other brands like that are both men and women, or half of their customers are less interested. Not to say that there aren't men that care. I know that there are men that care, but statistically, there are going to be less men that care, therefore less men are calling out brands on their sustainability claims, whereas women are more likely to. She was sort of more open to more scrutiny, which is unfair, but also a reality, unfortunately, and therefore you do have to be really careful. And that's fine, because again, you're gonna make mistakes, no one's perfect, everyone's misspoken online. It's just then acknowledge it, try and take a bit of accountability, and then, actually say how you're gonna move forward, what you are going to do in order to achieve to be a slow fashion company. 5 key areas that we should be looking into for a slow fashion brand. We have got low production frequency, ethical labour, sustainable materials, longevity by design, and transparency so the customer can verify the claims. So that ultimately was what was missing, and that's that's okay. They messed up, they've addressed it, let's move on. It's not about villainizing founders who have made mistakes. Accountability and education. And I feel like we've achieved that on this podcast episode. Contrary to public opinion, consumers are smart and they're becoming increasingly aware of the fashion's impact on the environment and how that ultimately impacts us and other people around the world and obviously the environment, but because consumers are becoming far more aware, far more knowledgeable, and therefore if you're going to make claims, you gotta have the receipts. I hope this was like helpful for both businesses and consumers, because for businesses it's like what you have to incorporate in your business in order to be a slow fashion brand, and for consumers it's knowing that so then you can call out brands or know that you are shopping from a authentic, responsible slow fashion brand. So I hope this was useful. I really enjoyed this, but yeah, as always, stay curious, stay conscious, and remember, sustainable is the new black. Bye, susties.